This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How are you doing today on this Tuesday, February 20th? It is the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral at BamaCentral.com, watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. We appreciate everybody who's tuned in and joined us, or you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or on Amazon. We appreciate you rating, subscribing, and reviewing the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. What are we going to do today as proud members of the Bama Central Broadcasting Network? You can find us, Bama Central, your Sports Illustrated home for the Alabama Crimson Tide. You can find us at BamaCentral.com, at BamaCentral on the X machine, at Alabama Crimson Tide on Sports Illustrated on Facebook, and on Alabama at BamaCentral SI on Instagram. We're going to talk about a bunch of things today. We're going to get into a handful of things. We're going to try a new segment, if you don't mind. As always, you can find us at Joe Gaither 6 on all your social media machines. Jump in and shoot us a like, a comment, question, query, and complaint right there on all the social media machines, Facebook, Twitter, X machine, Instagram, whatever you want to do right there at Joe Gaither 6. We're going to try a handful of different topics today. First, the college football playoff solidified their model for the coming up season for the 12-team playoff model. Next, we're going to debut a segment. It's all going to be Alabama football related. We're going to call it 3-2-1. We're going to debut that. You guys can jump in and join us on that. And then we're going to talk about Alabama basketball and SEC basketball midweek, their midweek slate. And we will leave you with a little bit of baseball if we have a little bit of time. But we're just going to hang out right here on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter at Joe Gaither 6. This is the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. So let's jump right into it with the college football playoff and their announcement today that they are going to adopt. They're locking in the 5+7 model for the coming up season, the 12-team playoff. And we're all, I guess, maybe you're excited about that. If you like the 12-team playoff, you can jump in and tell me. If you don't like that, you can jump in and tell me as well. But I am now pro 12-team playoff. I wasn't a pro 12-team playoff going into last season, but last season showed me or let me see that the changing landscape in college football is creating much more parity and is making it a lot harder to win a national championship. You can see Alabama going, having a lot more struggles in conference play, and people can say, oh, that's because Nick Saban's getting old. I don't necessarily see it that way. I think the talent is dispersing throughout college football, and while Alabama still has had one of the top recruiting classes over the last several years, there's been other teams that have jumped. I mean, Texas A&M wasn't a top-end recruiter until NIL. Texas has jumped their recruiting class up. Miami has jumped into the game with 2 feet. USC has as well. Like different programs are jumping in there and reviving themselves thanks to NIL. And, it is creating more parity in the sport. So I am now pro 12-team playoff. And so with that, I think that it's a good. You see the 5+7 model, and you ask, do you like it? Well, you like it better than the 6+6, what you were kind of leaning towards a year ago. But now the Pac-12 is dead, and you don't really have that many strong of conferences. What do you have? The SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, the ACC. You can debate amongst yourselves if the Big 12 and the ACC have the power, have the cachet to belong at the table. You are worried now, if you're the ACC, about Clemson and about Florida State potentially moving to conferences. But right now, they do have a seat at the table. You have 5 automatic qualifiers. The top 5 conference champions will go to the college football playoff, and then you're going to have 7 at-large bids. My friend Steven Stingray joins me on the Facebook machine, says, Joe, you aren't going to talk about Alabama on the diamond. Alabama plays Middle Tennessee and Alabama State tomorrow. That's about all we're going to talk about it unless we hit it at the very end of the show. I know Alabama baseball is 3-0, Stingray, and I appreciate you jumping in and joining us. Make sure you check out the Stingray Show on Tide 100.9 and on the various podcast platforms as well, as they're interviewing all kinds of great guests. But Alabama baseball is still too early early for me to really jump in with both feet. I know they beat Manhattan 3 games in a row and had 3 different types of games. The offense got going on Saturday, and then really the pitching not so hot on Sunday for the guys. So we'll see if they can keep things going, stay unbeaten this week against Middle Tennessee, and then Alabama State. I think they played Valparaiso at the end of the week. But back to the college football playoff, Stingray. We're going to talk, if you like the 5+7 model, we're going to use last season's college football rankings going into the playoff. Alabama with 4, Florida State at 5, Georgia at 6, et cetera, et cetera. And we're basically going to break down what it's going to look like in the future with the shifted model. You've seen, basically the Big Ten has swallowed the Pac-12. The SEC is getting Texas and Oklahoma, and you're excited about that from an SEC perspective. But if you were to use and adopt this model, basically, what would you have? You look at the playoff model and you see 5 Big Ten teams would have been in the playoff, 6 SEC teams. Now, this is just based off the top 12. It's not based off the playoffs with the conference champions. You've got 5 Big Ten teams were in the top 12. 6 SEC teams were in the top 12 last year. 1 ACC team, good job, way to go, Florida State. Nobody in the new Big 12 was in the top 12. The highest ranked team in the new Big 12 was Arizona at 14. So at 14, you're in the playoff. Arizona, the Big 12 champion. You had 3 Big 12 teams, 3 members of the new Big 12 finish in the top 25. Okay, that's Arizona, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State. And that's generous because Oklahoma State finished at 20 and Kansas State finished at 25. So basically, what are we doing here? We are letting small ball conferences like the ACC and the Big 12, and who knows what's going to happen with Oregon State and Washington State, the last 2 members of the Pac-12. Are they going to combine with the Mountain West? What are they going to end up doing? You're letting the American Conference into the college football playoff. You look at Liberty. Liberty last year came in 18, 19, and then they went to the Fiesta Bowl and got their brains beaten in by Oregon, the now Big Ten Oregon team, the Big Ten, the Oregon Ducks. You have 5 you have 6 teams, 6 Big Ten teams ended up in the top 25. So you have a huge disparity. So when you look at these 7 at-large teams, you're basically fighting. Are you going to split it up? 3 SEC squads and 4 Big Ten squads? Is it going to be 4 SEC squads and 3 Big Ten squads? So you're going to have your SEC champion. Good job. Your game in Atlanta still matters. But basically the rest of it, you're going to take your next 3 for the SEC. So what would that have been this year? It would have been your Georgia. Georgia gets in as runner-up, and then what? LSU and Tennessee get in. Well, Tennessee was 4 down. It would have been Missouri. Excuse me. It would have been Missouri and then LSU. Is that what I have right? Where's my rankings? I know I have it on one of these tabs. Yeah, right there. Boom. Thank you. It would have been Georgia and then Missouri and Ole Miss. Would have been the next 2 squads. That would have been in the playoff if you take that model. Well, shoot. Actually, Texas gets in there because they would have been the highest ranked team. Does Texas beat Alabama in an SEC championship game? That would have been wild. How would you have handled? Texas would have been in an SEC championship game against Georgia in the new model. That's what it would have been. Oh my gosh! As we're all clicking, Texas would have been in an SEC championship game against Georgia. You get the winner. Loser is in. Alabama is the 3rd squad, the 3rd SEC squad. So basically, you've got your automatic qualifier. Alabama is your 2nd, and then your 3rd squad would have been Missouri. Yeah, Missouri coming in as the next highest ranked team in the SEC at number 9. How wild would that be? And then hypothetically, your Big Ten championship game would have been your national title game, Michigan versus Washington, play in the Big Ten championship game. And so Ohio State, they get a free pass in as one of the at-larges, probably one of the top at-larges. You play the Big Ten out. Essentially, you're going to have the SEC and the Big Ten conference champion. They're probably going to be national title worthy teams. And then you're going to have a handful of other automatic qualifiers like Florida State this past year, or who would have qualified as your Big 12 champion. Oh, like we said, Arizona at 14, and then you continue on down here. Liberty at 23, undefeated Liberty. Great job. You're not even worthy of being on the. So it's going to be a mixture. It's going to be a different. It's going to be a different take on the playoff, and I wonder if you like it. I think that the imbalance in conferences is going to cause a quick shift in how the playoff is determined. Right now, they've locked in this model. It seems like for 2 seasons, 2024 and 2025, and so you win the SEC, Alabama, and you're in the college football playoff. If you're not, you better finish in the top 3 out of you better finish in the top 4, because your top 4 is probably going to the college football playoff from an SEC perspective. And Kalen DeBoer, does that give you a little more cushion in your first season taking over for Coach Nick Saban? I would argue that it probably does. I think it probably does give you more cushion from a brand new coach's perspective, because Coach, the champion, the standard is championship or bust. So you may lose a game, drop a game. Think about the schedule this coming up season at Oklahoma and then the Iron Bowl the next week. You're going to Wisconsin. It's going to be a brutal schedule. Georgia is coming to Bryant-Denny Stadium. You're going to likely probably drop 1, 2, 3, who knows how many games, but you can still finish in the top 4 of the SEC and get into the college football playoff. I think it's going to be pretty much an automatic berth. How do they split up those at-larges between the Big Ten and the SEC? And does the Big 12 have anybody? Does the Big 12 have anybody that's going to be worthy of getting one of those at-larges? Does the ACC have anybody? Will Clemson revive themselves? I mean, the ACC had a pretty good year. You look at the ACC, they have 5 teams that finished. 5 teams that finished in the top 25, the college football playoff. Yeah, Florida State at 5, so they would have automatically qualified. Louisville, you're out. Sorry, at 15. Then you go NC State at 18, Clemson at 22. The new ACC gets SMU, go Mustangs, at 24. So you've got 5 teams. What happens with Notre Dame? Notre Dame is now going to lean towards maybe joining a conference. I still think they won't join a conference. I think that they're going to be too proud to do that and aren't going to want to share their NBC/Peacock money. But if Notre Dame sees this new format, if you're Notre Dame, if you're the Fighting Irish and you're seeing this and you're like, okay, we can be the number 1 overall team in the country. We can go 12-0. We can beat everybody. We can beat Navy and Air Force and Boston College and beat, all these, mediocre teams that are on our schedule. Okay, the one game we'll get up for USC. We'll get up to play Southern California and play a real team. Oh, we'll play a small mixture of ACC teams. We'll play sometimes, NC State. Sometimes they don't play a full ACC schedule. They play, whoever they want to. They go play Navy in Ireland. And that sort of thing. That's why we don't take you seriously, Notre Dame. But essentially, you can be number 1 the whole year, undefeated. And you're not going to be in the college football playoff higher than 7, right? No, higher than 6. So if you're Notre Dame, then you see the top 5 conference champions and you see, a team like Liberty, who's 23, undefeated. Yep, but they're a conference champion. Or Arizona at 14, the Big 12 champion. Yeah, they're a conference champion. They're in higher rank than you at 2 or at 3 or at 4. And you're like, what the hell, man? We had a much better season, even though we beat up on, we beat up on Air Force. We beat up on Georgia Tech. If you're number 1, you get punished. Not punished, but you don't have that reward, that top 5 seed, and you don't have the 4 seed. It's going to work out as the bye. So you're playing. You are playing on campus. That's great. You get the number 6 seed, and you're playing a home game. But you could have a great season, and the college football playoff is not going to reward you because you're not a conference champion. I do like the emphasis that it places on the conference championship game. You get the bye. But if you're Notre Dame, does that force you? Does that say, Notre Dame, we're ready to bite our tongue and kind of bend the knee and join the conference? And if you're Notre Dame, you happily go from 17 to 18 teams. Or if you're the Atlantic Coast Conference, you're trying to hang on. You're trying to hang on for relevancy to bite into the footprint that the Big Ten and the SEC already has. So it's going to be interesting to see how the college football playoff, the new format, plays out. But if you're Alabama, if you're Kalen DeBoer, I think this is a positive thing. The 5+7 instead of the 6+6, you get the extra team that's at large. I mean, you are always going to have to make room at the table for a it's group of four, it's Power Four conference with SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and ACC. Do the Big 12 and do the ACC even belong? You look at the ACC, the SEC. Oh, excuse me. You look at the Big 12. And it doesn't even look like a conference that belongs. Like it looks like the American. It looks like the American conference. It looks like a second-rate basketball conference at this point. When you think about it from a football standpoint, but they're going to have an automatic seat at the table. I think that this model will change very quickly. So let's enjoy it for what it is right now. You're going to get two years of it, 5+7. If you're head coach Kalen DeBoer and you're taking over Alabama, obviously your best path to the college football playoff is winning the SEC. But if you finish in that top four of the SEC, I think you put yourself in great position to be one of those automatic qualifiers, get one of those 7 spots. So it'll be a lot of fun to see how that plays out this season. Let's get into and try a new segment. We're going to try a football-centric segment. We're going to call it 3-2-1. Before we do that, we want to tell you about our friends at Druid City Music Hall. Druid City, unfortunately, the concert is canceled tonight. So if you're planning on going to see the Brook and the Bluff, they have canceled their show due to sickness in the band, and that's very sad. But there are 3 more opportunities for you to see live music right here in Tuscaloosa. You can see the Pigeons playing ping pong on Wednesday. That's tomorrow night. You can see 49 Winchester on Thursday in 2 nights, and you can see the Stews on Friday. That's going to be in 3 evenings. I'm going to be there on Friday to see the Stews. They remind me a lot of a young Kings of Leon, so they sounded great. It's going to be right down there on the Strip. You can see them. Get tickets at druidcitymusichall.com. You can join me on Friday. If country is more your thing, more classic rock country sound, you can hear 49 Winchester on Thursday. Pigeons playing ping pong was a bit of an eclectic sound, was a bit of a jam bandy type Humphreys McGee, a little bit of a Talking Heads vibe, a lot of fun there. But so I encourage you to check out all the acts right down there at Druid City Music Hall on the Strip right there in Tuscaloosa. You can get your tickets at druidcitymusichall.com. Okay, let's move into 3-2-1. All right, 3-2-1. We're just going to basically use the numbers to count down and basically outline our segments. 3, obviously, and this is all Alabama football related. For 3, we're going to debut and we're going to talk about 3 new coaches in the last 24 hours. Yesterday, we talked just a little bit about Brian Ellis and Chris Kapilovic. We're also going to throw in Christian Robinson. All right, the 3 coaches were hired in the last 48 hours or so. And why? Obviously, you know the vacancy with Ryan Grubb leaving and Scott Huff going with him to the Seattle Seahawks. You wish them well. You had to replace those guys along with an offensive line coach and a tight ends coach. You did that with Chris Kapilovic and Brian Ellis. What's up with Christian Robinson? All right, middle of the day yesterday, William Inge, who is supposedly coming onto the staff, former co-defensive coordinator for the Washington Huskies, is supposedly coming to Tuscaloosa to coach your linebackers. It comes out, you look at the news, and boom, William Inge is going to Tennessee, the University of Tennessee. He's going to be coaching the linebackers and being a co-defensive coordinator with the Volunteers instead of here in Tuscaloosa. So you got to replace him, and that stings to a degree. Obviously, you lose a little familiarity as William Inge has spent the last 2 seasons with Kalen DeBoer. So you go out and you hire Christian Robinson to be an outside linebackers coach. Christian Robinson has been with the Baylor Bears. So in quick succession, you get 2 coaches off the Baylor staff. Now, Chris Kapilovic is not real. Well, is he a Baylor coach? Is he not? He's been with the Baylor Bears since December. Basically, he was an offseason addition, and he's jumped jobs twice now in the offseason, from Michigan State to Baylor, and now from Baylor to Alabama. And you look at his record along the offensive line, and you think, okay, how do you judge an offensive line coach? And it's really difficult, and I don't want to be critical of things that you don't know that are going on at Michigan State. Let's go with a really easy metric. Do you have any NFL prospects? Do you have any NFL players? You spent, 2020, 21, 22, and 3. 4 seasons at Michigan State. Did you put anyone into the league right now? And the answer for Alabama fans, happily, is yes. There are 2 guys. Now, granted, it's Michigan State. It's not Alabama. It's not turning out NFL prospects like it is a factory at Ohio State or like it is at Georgia or like it would be at Alabama. But they've got two guys that are on NFL rosters right now, Kevin Jarvis and A.J. Akuri. Kevin Jarvis is an undrafted free agent. He is with the Buffalo Bills. He hasn't seen any time in an NFL game, but he's been on and off churning the bottom and the end of the roster for the last 2 seasons. And he spent time at Michigan State. He spent 5 years at Michigan State. He spent 3? That's 2 years underneath Chris Kapilovich's tutelage. And so, boom, there's your guy right there in the NFL. And then A.J. Akuri is a 7th-round draft pick for the Los Angeles Rams. He played in 8 games last season, so he's a new player in the NFL. Last year was his first year, 2023. And so, boom, he is easily a Chris Kapilovich project. And you see who's the kid that went to the Seahawks. Goodness gracious. Kenneth Walker. Thank you. Kenneth Walker, great running back out of Michigan State. Had a lot of great holes to run through it up there in the Big Ten. There was some time where he was in some Heisman consideration. Didn't he win the Doak Walker Award that year? But he did not win the Heisman. He didn't end up finishing as high. He went 4 or 5 games where he was pretty highly rated, but you got to run behind an offensive line. So this is Chris Kapilovich. You got 2 guys in the NFL. You hope to see that you hope to see that continue. Obviously, Tyler Booker is a shoe-in. You can't really count him as a Kapilovich project, even though he's going to spend 1 year with him this year. You look at Kapilovich, and hopefully he's going to get the most out of these 3 freshman offensive linemen who have come in, Casey Poe or Joe Ionata and William Sanders, and then you're just going to see who else they can get in the transfer portal. You look at Brian Ellis. Brian Ellis, the kid, he's not a kid, 35 years old, young guy coming over from Georgia Southern. Former offensive coordinator, Georgia Southern. He's coming to Tuscaloosa to be the tight ends coach. And you look at his coaching record. Well, who has he coached? He spent time yesterday. We talked about him spending time at Southern Cal and at Western Kentucky. Well, when he was with the Southern Cal Trojans, he coached a young man named Sam Darnold, who was in Heisman contention and ended up being a top 5 NFL draft pick. Did Sam Darnold have a little bit of a turnover problem? Absolutely. But working with Sam Darnold is great for your resume. Then when you're with Western Kentucky, what do? Well, you just turn Bailey Zappi into an NFL product. Bailey Zappi, obviously, you've seen from an Alabama perspective what he has done in New England, pushing Mac Jones for the starters role in New England. We'll see. I think New England's going to dump them both this offseason. But Bailey Zappi, you worked with Bailey Zappi, you work with Sam Darnold. Now you go to Georgia Southern, and Georgia Southern's been kind of a bit mid since jumping into FBS. They were amazing, unbelievable in the FCS as an FCS program, but they have struggled to find their way as an FBS program. But he's come here as an offensive coordinator. Now he's the tight ends coach. And he's going to be working with C.J. Dupree. He's no longer going to be working with Amari Niblack. Unfortunately, we're going to see how they work out with a guy like Caleb Odom, C.J. Dupree, and we'll find out who else is in that tight end room when we get on to number 2 out of 3, 2, 1. Lastly, finally on Christian Robinson. Back to Christian Robinson. He's coaching outside linebackers. He's spent a couple of years, 2-3 years under Dave Aranda. Dave Aranda, one of the best defensive minds in football. Now, Christian Robinson is a young guy. He played college football with the Georgia Bulldogs 2009 to 2012. So he's really he's not brand new, obviously. He spent 4 years at Florida. He spent a season at Auburn. So he spent time in the SEC coaching linebackers. He knows what he's doing in that regard. And boom, there's your guy. If anybody's worried about the Southern connections on the staff for Kalen DeBoer, I know that's a concern for some people, but Christian Robinson gives you that and gives you a youthful perspective, not quite brand new, but obviously not an older fella as well. So a handful of young guys on the staff in the last 24, 48 hours. And once again, your staff is complete. Yesterday on the show, we said the staff was complete. And then once we hit end, after a couple hours, William Inge news breaks that he was going to Tennessee. And really, that vacancy didn't last more than, 25, 35 minutes? Christian Robinson filling that. And once again, your staff is full. So if anybody's worried about that staff or curious about that staff, from top to bottom, offensive coordinator on down, you got Nick Sheridan. Nick Sheridan's going to be working really closely with Jamarcus Washington, who's coaching wide receivers and co-offensive coordinator. Robert Gillespie, former running backs coach, is still right there. Running backs coach. Chris Kapilovich, offensive line coach. Brian Ellis, tight ends coach. Then you flip, other side of the ball. Kane Womack, defensive coordinator. Then you go Christian Robinson, outside linebackers coach. Maurice Linguist, secondary coach. Colin Hitchler is coaching secondary as well. And Freddie Roach along the defensive line. So that's going to be your Alabama staff. And that is number 3. For number 2, we're going to talk about two new transfers coming to Alabama football in the last 24 hours. You look online and you can see them. You can find out Keon Sabb is one of them, safety out of the University of Michigan, University of Michigan. And then you look at it and Josh, oh my gosh, all my tabs are going crazy. Josh Cuevas, tight end out of Washington. So two new transfers coming to Tuscaloosa in the last 24 hours. You get your first defensive transfer. Let's start with Keon. Let's start with Keon Sabb. You get your first defensive transfer in the Kalen DeBoer era. Yeah, he joins Damani Jackson and LT Overton as defensive transfers in this cycle, but both LT and Damani committed to Alabama under Nick Saban. They both stayed under the transition. So Sabb becomes your first defensive recruit, your defensive transfer per se. And why is he available? He's available because Jim Harbaugh, after winning the national championship in Michigan, if you turned off the season and said college football's over, after he won the national championship, he went and shopped himself around, and now he's the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. So they go into a 30-day period where the window's wide open, and Keon Sabb, former 4-star safety, comes and says, I want to come join the Alabama Crimson Tide. And so he becomes your first defensive commit. And what's he bring? He brings 18 games of experience, 14 this past season for the national championship winning Michigan Wolverines. He's got 2 interceptions this past season. He started a couple of games, a handful of starts. Look, in the national championship game, he had 6 tackles against the Washington Huskies. Only 1 tackle against Alabama, credited with 5 pass breakups on the year as a rotational safety. I think he's going to make for a very interesting prospect for Alabama this coming up season. And you see the need. The need is very obvious for safety. You look at Jalen Key, he's gone. You look at Caleb Downs, he's gone. And unfortunate for both situations. I mean, Jalen Key, he's just out of eligibility. Like Caleb Downs, he's gone for the transfer portal due to NIL and fit. And you wish him well. But you got a hole there in the safety position for the back end. Somebody's got to play besides Malachi Moore. And maybe Keon Sabb is that guy. Now, a lot of people are suggesting that Keon Sabb was being recruited by all these schools because he's got 2 younger brothers. Keon Sabb is out of New Jersey. He went to IMG, and he's now been at Michigan 2 years. He's got 3 years worth of eligibility because I guess he holds on to his red shirt from the first year. That would be my guess. The first year only played in 4 games. But Keon Sabb he's got 2 younger brothers, Amari Sabb and Xavier Sabb. 2026 for Amari Sabb, 2027 for Xavier. Both these guys are athletes out of New Jersey. Here's what I'm going to say. I think it's great to think forward ahead, but you don't waste a scholarship. You don't waste a roster spot on guys because they've got younger brothers down the pipeline, especially when you're taking over what is a brand new program for Kalen DeBoer. He's going to have to use these. I mean, will it help? Is it a small aspect? Is it a gold star? Is it like a little cherry on top? Absolutely. But you got to go get guys who can play. And Keon Sabb, we'll see if he can join the Alabama Crimson Tide. And he's leaving. I mean, look, he leaves Michigan, national championship winner, and he comes to Alabama. I guess he's seeking a little more playing time or a better fit. We'll see how that works out for him here in Tuscaloosa, or a bigger stage right here in the SEC. Secondly, number 2, the second commit for our 3-2-1, and number 2, Josh Cuevas, tight end out of Washington, and he becomes the 4th Washington Husky to transfer from Washington to Tuscaloosa, joining Kalen DeBoer. What's that? Austin Mack, Parker Brailsford. You got Jeremy Bernard, and now Josh Cuevas. And all 4 of them are on the offensive side of the ball. Josh Cuevas, 6'3", 6'4", 240, tight end, sophomore. Look, he's going to be a junior when he comes to Tuscaloosa. Is he a playmaker? No. He only has, 4 receptions, 160-something yards, and a touchdown last year. But he does know the offense, and I guess that helps you get guys in every room. Now you've got Jeremy Bernard, who can help the wide receivers. I guess you're going to have Josh Cuevas, who can help the tight ends. You got Parker Brailsford in the offensive line room, and Austin Mack. I guess you got to go see if they got a running back. Do they have a running back? Or maybe Josh Cuevas can play H-back and get himself into the backfield and play tight end. You've got a Washington Husky, a former Kalen DeBoer player in every room except for the running back room in the offensive room for Alabama, helping everybody learn this offense. I don't think that Cuevas is going to be like a really impactful player. Will he make a couple receptions? Sure. I'm sure he will. But I don't think that he's going to be a dynamic weapon in this offense. So, but it's fun to see 2 new players. You got 3 new coaches, 2 new players, and number 1 is going to be yesterday's with the first day of the 4th quarter program. Number 1. First day, that's where it all gets started. Now, David Ballou is still your strength and conditioning coach, and I imagine a lot of things are still going to be similar in the 4th quarter program under David Ballou. I'm sure a couple things will be tweaked, but under David Ballou, you're going to have the first day get started, and really, it's going to be here before you know it. You've got the spring transfer window in April. You've got A-Day coming up in April. You're sitting here February 20th, March, the whole month of March, and then boom, middle of April, we're sitting here celebrating A-Day. It's going to be here before you know it. The Kalen DeBoer era has been flying by. He's 6-7 weeks into his time here in Tuscaloosa. He talked about it on the Mac and Cube show up there in Birmingham, WJOX in Birmingham, and talked about how it's been nice to settle into a routine over the last week or so, and how they've are utilizing the transfer portal. You can read about that on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. They've got only a couple scholarship positions left. You look at what the roster says on RollTide.com, and you count them up one by one, and you see what did I have? 76. I had 76, and then you've got 8 early enrollees. Not early, 8 summer enrollees for the 2024 class, with our friend Amari Jefferson being among them. Ryan Williams, Amari Jefferson, Steve Mbuamua. There's going to be 8 of them. So that brings you up to 84. 76 plus 8, check my math, 84. You're supposed to have 85 or under. Kalen DeBoer on Mac and Cube this morning saying we have a couple of scholarships, not a lot, but a couple of scholarships left. That leads me to believe that one of the kickers that I've counted, one of the local kids, one of the in-state products is not actually on scholarship, and maybe the number is not at 84. Maybe it's at 83 or 82, and that gives you a little more flexibility. When you get to that spring transfer window, April 15th, it's going to be 2 days after A-Day. Everybody's going to have had their chance to go through spring. Fourth quarter in spring, you see the new regime, you see where you stand on the depth chart, especially with the new Washington players coming in. That gives you a great picture of what to do going forward. Those 15 days are going to be pivotal. Maybe a couple more guys go into the transfer portal from an Alabama perspective. You're thinking about getting 1, 2, 3 more players out of the portal. If an Alabama player goes, every player that goes in is a player that can come back out from the portal. So I wouldn't worry so much about roster management going forward. You're sitting right there on the scholarship limit, 83, 84, depends on how some of the scholarships break out. And I think you've got a little bit more room to grow from an Alabama perspective. It's going to all work out. Let these guys get into spring. Your number one is yesterday was the first day of fourth quarter program. With it being the first day of fourth quarter program, if you didn't see it on the Twitter machine, you can check out Paul Constantine. Paul Constantine is at PC Strength _81. And Paul Constantine, if you're not aware, he was a former basically strength and conditioning coach / off-field advisor. He served in a role off the field and player development. And Paul Constantine is leaving for a strength and conditioning position with the Atlanta Falcons. Woo, boy, yesterday on his social media machine, he bench presses 500 pounds for his last bench press here at the University of Alabama before he goes off to the Atlanta Falcons. So you celebrate Paul Constantine hitting that mark and you wish him well. I'm not really a big Atlanta Falcons fan here. I kind of love when they lose, but you wish everybody well in their next professional endeavor. So there's your 3-2-1, 3 new Alabama coaches, 2 new Alabama players, and the first day of Alabama's fourth quarter program getting kicked off on a Monday, making it a huge day of Alabama football yesterday. And you see Kalen DeBoer pivoting every single time. I mean, you lose your offensive coordinator, you lose your offensive line coach, boom, pivot. You lose your veteran inside linebackers coach in William Inge, boom, pivot. You got a safety who's a hot little prospect out of Michigan and interested in joining your program. He's got a relationship with Courtney Morgan already. Of course, you take him. I think it's going to be a lot of fun following Kalen DeBoer. You can continue to do that on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com, your Sports Illustrated home for the Alabama Crimson Tide. All right, let's keep the program rolling on a Tuesday, and we appreciate everybody who's joining us on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube at Joe Gaither 6. And, of course, you're subscribed to the BamaCentral YouTube channel at BamaCentral. If you're not, you should be. We put up all the press conferences that we are at. We put up all kinds of clips, all kinds of behind-the-scenes coverage right there at the BamaCentral YouTube channel, so you can be a part of that by subscribing to the BamaCentral YouTube channel. Let's keep this bad boy going by talking about SEC basketball midweek slate. We're going to talk about the SEC midweek slate, and we'll see what else we have on our brains as we finish it up. Okay, it's not a great midweek slate, especially tonight. If you are trying to look entertained, Tuesday, 6 p.m., number 5 Tennessee goes to Missouri. We talked a little bit about Missouri the other day. Are they going to go winless in the SEC? I think they might. They're going to get absolutely destroyed tonight. Tennessee, 11.5 point favorite. I think the Volunteers win and cover bigly. Also, 6 o'clock, this is going to be on ESPN. Ooh, they're hurting on programming if this is on ESPN. Arkansas is at Texas A&M. The Hogs trying to salvage something out of their season, and Texas A&M trying to bounce back after losing 2 road games last night. Texas A&M, an 11.5 point favorite. I'm going to take Arkansas to cover, but Texas A&M to win. So Tennessee to win and cover, Arkansas to cover, but A&M to win in tonight's midweek slate. For Wednesday, let's get into Wednesday, and we'll finish with Alabama and Florida. Georgia is at Vanderbilt at 7:30 on SEC Network. Look, Georgia's going to win. They need to win. Vanderbilt might slip up and bite you, though. Georgia's got that program. They haven't been able to play 40 minutes with anyone. They play close with pretty much everybody and fade in the end. Maybe Vanderbilt can bite them, but I'm going to take the Georgia Bulldogs. At 8 o'clock on ESPN, the Kentucky Wildcats are going down to LSU. They're going to try to win another game on the road after beating Auburn in Neville Arena on Saturday. So they're trying to bounce back and make it 3 in a row against Ole Miss, Auburn, and now LSU. I think Kentucky will win. LSU, maybe, though, coming off a nice win on the road against South Carolina, maybe they can defend home court and really end the Kentucky Wildcats' chances at winning the SEC regular season. And then the nightcap at 8 o'clock on ESPN2 is the Egg Bowl. at Mississippi State, Ole Miss at Mississippi State. This is the return trip. Mississippi State played Ole Miss pretty close, but lost over in Oxford. I'm going to say it flips and Mississippi State wins in Starkville. So there you go. Now, 6 o'clock, that's what you're all worried about. 6 o'clock on Wednesday. Go ahead, make your plans. Ask your boss to get off early. Ask your boss to make your plans that you're going to leave at work at 4 o'clock. It's a 6 o'clock tip-off. It's on ESPN2. Don't use the early tip-off as a reason why you can't be there. It's a big game for Alabama. They got, 4 or 5? They have 5 more quad 1 games remaining on the schedule, and it starts with number 24, Florida, who's really been on a little bit of a heater. Florida's been a really nice offensive rebounding team, and you saw Alabama really, really struggle with that on Saturday. Now, can Alabama shoot the lights out? They're going to be playing at home. Of course they can. They're probably going to make 40, 43, 42% from beyond the arc. But Florida's coming on a 3-game winning streak. They've won 3, 4, 5. Look at this. They've won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of their last 8. Their last loss was at Texas A&M, and they lost at Tennessee a couple of weeks before that. So they're playing real good basketball. They won at Kentucky. They beat Auburn. Y'all saw that, and that really helped Alabama retain first place in the SEC standings. It's going to be a dogfight. Florida's going to come in there and try to chuck up a bunch of shots and go rebound them and get to the free throw line, and they're going to try to really play a lot of similar ways to Alabama. Can Alabama make three-pointers the way that they have been lately in Coleman Coliseum? If you make 18 three-point shots, Alabama's going to be a tough team to beat. So you're going to have to see that at 6 o'clock in Coleman Coliseum on ESPN2. And I think the Crimson Tide will win and keep their streak, their SEC home streak alive. So with that, we're going to pretty much wrap up the program. We talked on the show today about the college football playoff new format being finalized, 5 conference champions and 7 at-larges. I do think it's going to only last the 2 seasons before it gets adjusted again, unless the ACC and the Big 12 can prove their worth, can prove how, I don't predict them to get that many at-larges. You look at the past year, Florida State would have been in automatic qualifier from the ACC, but they don't get anyone else because your next best team is Louisville at 15. Yeah, Arizona gets in from the Big 12 as your automatic qualifier, as your conference champion, but they don't get anyone else. So are they really on par with the Big 10 and with the SEC? I think you're going to see these two conferences really use their strength to dictate terms to get this thing working in their favor. You're going to see the SEC and the Big Ten really dominate those 7 at-large spots. So we talked about the college football playoff. We played a little game of 3-2-1. We're going to try to keep that as a weekly segment, and you can comment what you want to talk about, what you think our 3-2-1 topic should be. Today it was basically newness. You have 3 new coaches. You have 3 new players from the transfer portal, and it's a new part in the calendar as it's the number 1, the first day of the 4th quarter yesterday over there at the Hank Crisp indoor facility for Alabama football. And then we rounded it up with SEC basketball, a little midweek slate this week, kind of a boring midweek slate if you ask me. Maybe LSU pulls off an upset, and that's kind of your biggest, most pivotal game outside of Alabama's game with Florida. If Alabama is able to win, all else doesn't really matter. The rest is kind of in the wash as Alabama has a huge week with Florida coming to Coleman Coliseum on Wednesday and then going to Lexington, going to Rupp Arena on Saturday. So it's going to be a huge week, and you can follow it right here at BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. So with all that being said, we want to thank our friends and our partners at Druid City Music Hall. Unfortunately, their show tonight is canceled. The Brook and the Bluff, they've already rescheduled their show for some point in April, and we'll tell you more about that as it gets closer. But right now, they've got 3 shows the rest of the week. Pigeons playing ping pong on Wednesday, and then they're going to have 49 Winchester on Thursday. A little bit of a country classic rock sound, very southern rock with 49 Winchester. And then the Stews are going to be playing on Friday. Very Kings of Leon, very alternative rock. I'm going to be actually in there myself on Friday enjoying the Stews, and I hope you are as well. You can see them and get your tickets now at druidcitymusichall.com. We really appreciate them being a part of the show. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Joe Gaither Show. We encourage you to follow us at Joe Gaither 6, subscribe, rate, and review it at the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. And of course, find us right there at BamaCentral and at BamaCentral.com.
Thanks for joining us on today's edition of the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral. Keep up with Joe on all his social media pages at Joe Gaither 6. Subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to read us daily at BamaCentral.com.